My sister framed me for selling family business secrets. Years later, the truth came out, but I've already cut them off. I'm 28. 10 years ago, I learned that lesson the hard way, and the echoes of that betrayal still ripple through my life today. Every family photo on my wall tells a story of what was lost and what was perhaps never really there to begin with. Growing up in our modest suburban home, my sister Janine was everything I wasn't. She was the golden child, the one who could do no wrong in our parents' eyes. Even now, I can picture her perfectly, tall, graceful, with our mother's honey blonde hair and our father's confident smile. Everything about her seemed designed to overshadow me. She had perfect grades, was the star athlete, and always knew how to make our parents proud. I, on the other hand, was the quieter one, trying to follow in her footsteps but constantly falling short. It wasn't that my parents didn't love me, but it was clear who the favorite was. And Janine reveled in it. She never let me forget it. I threw myself into my studies during high school, not to compete with Janine. I'd learned early on that was futile, but to carve out my own path. While she excelled at debate and student government, I lost myself in history books, fascinated by stories of ancient civilizations and forgotten cultures. In those pages, I found an escape from my sister's shadow and my parents' constant comparisons. When the acceptance letter from a prestigious university in the UK arrived, I felt like my heart might burst. This was my chance, finally, to do something remarkable, something that was entirely my own. I remember that morning, how my hands trembled as I clutched the envelope, the hopeful flutter in my chest as I searched my parents' faces. "Mom, Dad, I got in. I actually got in." My voice was breathless with excitement as I spread the acceptance letter on our kitchen table, pointing to the university's elegant letterhead. The silence that followed still haunts me. It wasn't just quiet. It was heavy, loaded with unspoken words and uncomfortable glances between my parents. My mother fidgeted with her coffee cup, while my father suddenly became very interested in his morning paper. "Honey," my mother began, exchanging meaningful glances with my father, "we need to talk about the finances." Her voice had that careful tone she used when delivering bad news. The hope in my chest began to deflate. "What do you mean? You paid for Janine's education." I could hear the desperation creeping into my voice. "That was different," my father cut in, not looking up from his paper. "We can't afford to take on any more debt right now. We need to think about our future." The way he said "our" made it clear he wasn't including me in that equation. I felt like I'd been punched in the gut. My dream university felt like it was slipping through my fingers before I'd even had a chance to grasp it. "Could you at least help me get a student loan?" I pleaded, hating how small my voice sounded. "No," my father said firmly, finally looking up from his paper with that stern expression I knew too well. "We're not taking on that kind of risk." The finality in his tone left no room for argument. That evening, I sat in my room, surrounded by college brochures and acceptance letters, feeling more alone than ever. Janine passed by my door, pausing briefly to take in the scene. "You didn't really think they'd send you overseas, did you?" she asked, her tone dripping with false sympathy. "I mean, that's a bit ambitious for you, isn't it?" I ignored her, but her words stung because they echoed my own fears. Was I being too ambitious? Did I really think I could make it on my own? Desperate but not yet defeated, I turned to my Aunt Sarah, my father's older sister. She was different from the rest of my family, a successful neurosurgeon who had carved her own path despite my father's constant criticism of her career choices. She had always seen me, really seen me in a way my parents never did. I visited her at her home one weekend, sitting in her sunny kitchen that always smelled of fresh coffee and newly baked cookies. Unlike our house, where every surface had to be pristine and every item in its proper place, Aunt Sarah's home felt lived in and welcoming. "Of course I'll help," she said when I explained my situation, her kind eyes full of understanding. "But are you sure you want to keep this from your parents?" I wrapped my hands around the mug of hot chocolate she'd made me, drawing comfort from its warmth. Dad would never forgive me if he knew I asked you for help, I replied, thinking of his complicated relationship with his sister. Please, Aunt Sarah, this has to stay between us. She agreed, and for a brief moment, everything seemed possible again. If only I'd known what was coming. The betrayal, when it came, was swift and devastating. I came home one evening after spending the afternoon at the library, my mind full of plans for university. The moment I opened our front door, I knew something was wrong. The air felt different, charged with tension and unspoken accusations. My belongings were packed in boxes, stacked neatly by the stairs as if I were already gone. My parents sat stone-faced in the living room, with Janine standing beside them, that familiar smug expression on her face made worse by the triumph in her eyes. Care to explain these? My father demanded, throwing a stack of papers onto the coffee table. They scattered across the surface like autumn leaves, each one carrying a piece of my future with it. My hands shook as I picked up the papers. They were emails, perfectly fabricated emails, showing me supposedly selling our family's business secrets to my aunt in exchange for tuition money. My blood ran cold as I realized what Janine had done. The emails were masterfully forged, complete with headers and signatures that looked genuine at first glance. This isn't real, I stammered, my voice sounding strange and distant to my own ears. Dad, these are fake. Janine made them up. Don't you dare blame your sister, my mother snapped, her face flushed with anger. She's trying to protect this family from you. Protect the family? She's lying. Why can't you see that? I was practically shouting now, desperation making my voice crack. But they wouldn't listen. They never did when it came to Janine. My sister stood there, playing her role perfectly, the concerned older sibling who had uncovered a terrible betrayal. She even managed to squeeze out a few tears. I didn't want to believe it either. She said softly, her voice thick with fake emotion. But the evidence is right there. Get out, my father said quietly, his voice colder than I'd ever heard it. I won't have a traitor under my roof. Dad, please, I began, but he held up his hand, silencing me. You have an hour to get your things and leave. Anything left behind will be donated. The next hour passed in a blur of tears and frantic packing. My mother wouldn't even look at me as I carried boxes past her to my car. Janine watched from the top of the stairs, that smug smile still playing on her lips. The years that followed were a blur of pain and determination. My aunt took me in without hesitation, converting her home office into a bedroom for me. She supported me through university, helped me build a life of my own, became the parent I needed when my own had thrown me away. I graduated with honors, worked hard, tried to forget the family that had betrayed me so completely. I built a successful career in museum curation, specializing in ancient artifacts, fitting, perhaps, given how my own family had treated me like something to be discarded. Then, a year ago, my phone rang. Hello? I answered, not recognizing the number. Sweetie? My mother's voice, older and more tired than I remembered. We need to talk. The meeting that followed was surreal. We met at a coffee shop, neutral territory, and I barely recognized my parents. They looked smaller somehow, worn down by time and poor choices. My mother's carefully maintained appearance had slipped. Her roots were showing, and her clothes looked worn. My father's proud posture was gone, replaced by a defeated slump. We made a terrible mistake, my mother said, her hands trembling around her coffee cup. We believed Janine's lies. We should have trusted you. My father couldn't quite meet my eyes. She's taken everything, he admitted, his voice rough with emotion. The business, our savings, we have to beg her for money now. We need your help. I felt a laugh bubble up in my throat, bitter and sharp. Now you need my help? After 10 years of nothing? No calls, no cards, not even when I graduated? Please, my mother whispered. We're your parents. You stopped being my parents the day you chose her lies over me. I replied, my voice steady despite the storm of emotions inside me. Last night, everything came to a head when Janine showed up at my door unannounced. My aunt was over for dinner, and Janine refused to leave until we heard her out. She looked different, expensive clothes, perfectly manicured nails, the kind of polished appearance that comes from having more money than sense. "You're being selfish," she declared, standing in my living room like she owned it, her designer heels sinking into the carpet I'd saved for months to buy. "Mom and Dad need our help." "Our help?" I couldn't believe her audacity. "You're the one who's been bleeding them dry. They raised us." No, I cut her off, years of suppressed anger finally breaking free. "They raised you. They threw me away because of your lies. That was 10 years ago. Get over it already." She waved her hand dismissively, as if a decade of pain could be erased with a gesture. All the pain, all the anger I'd bottled up for 10 years came pouring out. "Get over it? You destroyed my relationship with our parents. You took everything from me, and now you have the nerve to ask for my help. You always were dramatic," she sneered, tossing her hair back. "Poor little sister, always the victim." My aunt stepped between us before things could get physical, her presence a reminder of what real family loyalty looks like. "I think it's time for you to leave, Janine." After she left, I broke down in my aunt's arms, feeling like that lost, betrayed teenager all over again. The weight of a decade's worth of pain and anger finally became too much to bear. "I can't do this anymore," I sobbed, my tears soaking in her sweater. "I can't keep letting them hurt me." My aunt stroked my hair, just like she had 10 years ago when I first showed up at her door with my life in boxes. "Then don't," she said softly. "You don't owe them anything." She was right, of course. She usually is. I've spent years trying to heal, trying to forgive, but some wounds run too deep, and some betrayals can never be undone. My family might share my blood, but they lost the right to share my life a long time ago. This morning, I woke up feeling lighter somehow. The world hasn't changed. My parents are still in financial trouble. Janine is still manipulating everyone around her, and that decade of pain hasn't magically disappeared. But I've changed. I'm finally at peace with my decision to keep my distance. Sometimes the only way to stop the pain is to let go of the people causing it, even if those people are family, especially if they're family. The ties that bind can also strangle if you let them. The little girl who desperately wanted her parents' approval is gone. In her place stands a woman who knows her worth, who understands that real family doesn't manipulate and betray. Real family stands by you, believes in you, fights for you. Like my aunt did, like my parents and sister never could. I've learned that family isn't about blood, it's about choice. It's about who shows up when you need them, who celebrates your victories and helps you through your defeats. It's about who makes you feel seen, heard, and valued. My aunt is more family to me than my parents or sister ever were, not because of DNA, but because she chose to love me unconditionally. She showed me what real family looks like, and in doing so, she helped me understand what I deserve. Today, I choose to surround myself with people who lift me up rather than tear me down. I choose to define family on my own terms. And most importantly, I choose to be at peace with letting go of those who only bring pain, even if they share my name. That's the real lesson in all of this. Sometimes the family you're born in isn't the family you're meant to have. And that's okay. It's not about who abandoned you. It's about who stayed. It's about who fought for you when everyone else was fighting against you. The journey isn't over. There will always be scars, always be moments when the pain feels fresh again. But I'm stronger now, wiser, and surrounded by people who truly love me. And that's a lesson worth all the pain it took to learn it. Thank you so much for listening to my story. If you have any thoughts, I'd love to hear them. So please leave a comment. Don't forget to like and subscribe if you want more stories like this one.